I sat in silence, staring blankly ahead. You might wonder why. My wife, Jane, had just asked me to agree to something unthinkable, being a cuckold for a week. My name is Mike, and even though I already knew my answer, a part of me hoped Jane wasn't serious. I needed a moment to process it all, to calm down before responding. You see, I've always been known for being a bit of a fool, a label I've learned to wear with a strange sense of pride. This bizarre situation began about a week ago at a barbecue hosted by my sister Barbara. It was a lively gathering, 15 couples, good food, flowing drinks, and plenty of laughter. Everyone seemed to be having a great time. Then someone shouted, "Let's play truth or dare." Barbara, our host, started things off by daring her husband, Tim, to massage Karen's feet. Karen's husband, Jeff, chuckled and joked, "Make sure you wash your hands after that, her feet are rough." As Tim reluctantly began rubbing Karen's feet, Barbara turned to her and casually asked, "So, how's the cucking going?" Felt like someone had just poured cold water over the party. A few of us husbands, including me, froze in shock. Jeff, however, seemed completely unfazed. "Karen has 3 lovers now," he said proudly, "and she's looking for more." I could barely wrap my head around what I was hearing. My initial instinct was to grab Jeff by the shoulders and shout, "What is wrong with you?" But before I could react, Jane shot me a look so sharp it could cut through ice. That was my cue to stay quiet. Grabbing another beer, I tried to keep my composure. Inside, my thoughts were spinning. Where's a bottle of rum when you need it? For the next 10 minutes, I endured Jeff's enthusiastic account of Karen's escapades, including explicit details about their most recent encounter. Unable to take any more, I excused myself and went to the bathroom. Locking the door behind me, I paced for 20 minutes, muttering to myself, trying to process the insanity without sounding completely deranged. When I finally opened the door, Barbara was standing there, arms crossed, glaring at me like I had committed some grave offense. "What's your problem?" I asked. "You're so rude," she snapped. "Rude? I haven't said or done anything," I protested. "I promised Jane I'd behave, and I have." Barbara launched into a lecture about how Jeff was supposedly showing his love for Karen by letting her explore other relationships, claiming it was strengthening their marriage. "How exactly does sleeping with other men make a marriage stronger?" I asked bluntly. Barbara looked taken aback but quickly recovered. She argued that I needed to be more open-minded and try to understand what women want, a skill she claimed. I hadn't mastered that skill in 11 years of marriage. "Has Tim been open-minded about this?" I shot back. Barbara hesitated before admitting she hadn't discussed it with him yet. "Jeff's easing the other husbands into the idea first," she explained. "For the first time in my life, I seriously considered slapping my sister. If Tim agrees to this nonsense, I'll babysit your kids while you're off with other men, and I'll even wash your car. But don't think for a second that I'll ever leave you alone with my wife again." With that, I walked back to the barbecue. When I returned, Jeff was chatting with Cara, Jane, and a few other wives. The husbands had gathered by the grill, all waiting for my opinion. Tim was the first to ask, "What do you think about all this?" I didn't hold back. "Tim, if Jane ever tried pulling something like that, I'd be out the door before you could scratch your left nut. I don't care what Jeff is into, that's his business, but it's not for me." After my outburst, Jane came over and told me it was time to leave. On the 45-minute drive home, Jane launched into a lecture. "You shouldn't judge a lifestyle until you've tried it," she said. I debated whether to argue or let it go until later. Being the fool I am, I chose the latter. The entire ride, Jane couldn't stop talking about Jeff and Karen. At one point, I wanted to shout, "If you like Jeff so much, why don't you marry him?" When we got home, Jane started rubbing my leg, and I thought, finally, some peace. That night was incredible. And the next 7 days? Even better. Jane was more affectionate than ever, getting intimate with me at least twice a day. But on the 8th day, her real motive became clear. "Mike, can we talk about something without you getting mad?" she asked. Then she dropped the bomb. Would you be willing to be a cuckold for a week? I took a deep breath and said, Sweetheart, after the week you've just given me, we can talk about anything. I promise I'll listen. She looked nervous but started with her usual preamble. Mike, you know how much I love you, right? My love for you grows every single day. But I think we need to add a little excitement to our relationship. Now, being the person I am, my inner devil was already running wild, thinking up all sorts of sarcastic replies. But before I could say a word, Jane cut me off. Mike, don't say anything until I finish. You never let me explain my side before you shoot me down. I sighed and nodded. You're absolutely right, honey, I replied. Go ahead, finish what you need to say. Then I'll say no. Jane launched into an emotional appeal, pouring her heart out. She pleaded that if I truly loved her, I would agree to be a cuckold for just 1 week. She looked at me with those big, pleading eyes, her lips forming a pout, her expression so sad it could soften even the hardest heart. I took a deep breath. Jane, I said, I love you more than I can ever put into words. I would do almost anything for you. I lived to make you happy, to grow old with you, to raise a family together. But my answer to this is a resounding hell no. If you ever ask me something like this again, I swear I'll burn this house to the ground and move to Canada. If you want a cockle, get yourself a bird. With that, I grabbed my keys and walked out. I ended up at my favorite bar, Angel's. Sliding onto a stool at the counter, I called out to the bartender. Kevin, my man, start a tab for me. I'll take a beer and a Long Island iced tea and keep them coming. As I sat there drowning my frustration in alcohol, who should walk in but Jeff and Tim? They took the stools on either side of me, staring at me like I had just insulted their families. Jeff broke the silence. Mike, what's wrong with you? You nearly ruined the barbecue we've been planning for weeks. I must have looked completely baffled because Tim patted my shoulder and said, Just hear us out. Then came the bombshell. They explained how they had been secretly recording Karen's exploits with her lovers. Jeff revealed it wasn't some weird kink. It was part of a legal strategy to minimize his losses in their upcoming divorce. He elaborated, saying Karen had tried to involve him in a threesome, which backfired. In Texas, adultery still matters, Jeff explained. My lawyer told me to play along and gather all the evidence I could. Shaking my head, I asked, Why give her anything after all she's done to you? Jeff grinned slightly and sipped his beer. Because the house is about to be foreclosed on. The cars haven't been paid for in 7 months. And my paychecks? They've been rerouted to an offshore account in my mom's name. Karen thinks she's walking away with everything, but she's in for a rude awakening. By the time I got home, around 3 a.m. or more accurately collapsed into Jane's cherished flower bed, I had made peace with the absurdity of it all. Jane found me snoozing among her roses and woke me up by dumping a bucket of water over my head. After a heated exchange about my late-night escapade, she dropped another bombshell. Karen's been served with divorce papers and has nowhere to go. She needs a place to stay. Can she use the spare room? I grumbled, muttered a few choice words under my breath, but eventually gave in, on one condition. Does Jeff care? I asked. Do whatever you want, Jeff said. I don't care where she goes. Karen lasted 1 week. One evening, as Jane and Karen sipped wine on the patio, Karen had the nerve to ask if she could sleep with me, just for 1 night. The next thing I heard was the sound of glass shattering and Jane screaming at the top of her lungs. Mike, get this woman out of my house, she yelled as she stormed inside. I can't believe I let you stay here. Pack your stuff and leave now. After Karen left and things calmed down, Jane and I had some much-needed reconciliation. Gave me time to reflect on something odd. Some women don't seem to mind the idea of sharing a man, until it's their own man in question.